Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
Calling the ghost of Mel.
Ooh.
Hi, Mel.
Hi.
Glad to see you in your corporeal form.
Thanks. I'm back from the dead, maybe? Was I dead?
I don't know. You'll have to tell me that.
I'm back from the adventure of lots of singing teenagers.
Ooh, that could go either way. Real good or real bad.
I know. It was really good this time.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Did you learn anything new?
Probably, but I forgot it already.
Okay,
My brain
perfect.
Okay, but I have a question for you. I want to see if you have a similar experience. So I swear that everybody's going insane in the world.
Okay.
And I mean, that's always happening, but I'm wondering if because it's a certain time out from COVID, if people are kind of in a grief process, like the whole world is in a grieving process, everybody's sick of certain things and people are like annoyed. Here's my theory. People can curate whatever they want in their life, in their like immediate, like their headphones, podcast or whatever they watch on TV.
Oh, uh-huh.
But then they go out into the wild and it's unpredictable because there's other humans. And I've noticed so much behavior from adults that's really childish. Like their thoughts are coming out their mouths that are really mean. Like on everywhere I go, it's really strange. So I'm wondering if something's going on. Have you noticed that in your life?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I've encountered people in the wild being more jerky than in the past. Or if people have just always seemed to be jerks to me. But I do think that in general, there is a level of, and I think that part of it is because like the online space where we're just not nice to each other anymore. We don't think that we have to like be polite, or there's just like a lot of outrage about all sorts of things and it's just coming out. I don't know if it's COVID, like lockdown related, or if it's just that we're moving into a space where I don't know, this it's kind of interesting because when we talk like about self-care and like taking care of ourselves, I kind of wonder sometimes like if we go too far, if that's what we get. Like my feelings are the only feelings that matter. Right.
Yeah.
And I think there is a balance between, yes, I need to take care of myself, but it also doesn't mean that I need to just be an ass to other people. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I asked some friends this too, and some live across the world, some live down the street, but have been traveling like I have. And maybe some aren't even traveling, they're just encountering it in their daily lives. And they're like, yeah, they tell me a couple of stories where it's like one person on an airplane that was a full grown adult, like 50 years old, was just, there was nothing really happening that was out of the ordinary. And she kind of lost it on
Hmm.
my friend. And then of course I'm getting these stories from my friends, but I'm like, okay, well, what is the actual
Wait, did your friend take a tuna fish sandwich
no,
and
he
like
didn't
stinky
even
cheese? Are you
no.
sure?
Yeah. He is very introverted psychologist that's very
I thought you were
aware
going to
of his
say
surroundings.
psychopath.
No, no, it's weird. Yeah, so it's just, and I don't see it with the kids, like the teenagers I was around. No, but there's something interesting going on, I think, in people's brains. I think you're right. There's a lot of topics people are outraged. Like that word is what I've felt.
Hmm. I
And
do think it's trickling down though to teenagers and kids though. I
really,
think that they're, yeah, yeah. I think they're
tell me
less
what you
likely.
notice.
I just think that they learn from their parents and their adult, you know, role models. And so if we aren't nice to people, then they learn to not be nice to people. So yeah,
Yeah, it's like
bad.
unfiltered thoughts are coming out of people's mouths.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, what is going on?
That's
So,
our inside. That's the things that happen inside our head. They don't need to come outside.
so the reason why I was wondering if it might be part of a collective grieving process and rebuilding is because the whole world went through the pandemic stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at our personal grieving processes, and it's like, okay, at first you're just in it, and then you have a couple steps kind of moving forward through things. And some of that is like you do change those things where you don't have tolerance for things anymore and you just say what you think. And
That's an
so
interesting
it's,
idea.
it's my sort of theory that I'm not sure about, but yeah,
Hmm. Well,
everyone be nice to each other.
I definitely think that the world is going through its own kind of grief because of what happened in COVID. But I also think for a lot of people, like that's done and over, and it's like too long ago to even remember, you know. But for like a lot of people, it really affected their lives. I mean, our audience, of course, we have so many COVID widows and widowers. So like that's like the most affected you could possibly be by that. And then there's a lot of people who are just like, whatever. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's got to be some correlation between how much online things people are consuming or
Hmm.
listening to, and I don't know. It's just wild to me because I've seen such like infantile behavior, elderly people and middle-aged people. And I like the teenagers right now, honestly, guys. So they're my favorites.
Oh gosh. You can come have mine sometimes if you want her. She's hilarious, but
Well, how are you doing?
we are plugging along. We went on our epic vacation. It was so hard and so much effort, and we had so much fun. It's like 90 bajillion degrees. I'm not even joking. Like we drove through one place, it was 117 degrees. I'm like, well, this is terrible. And as always, whenever you get back from something like that, you feel really accomplished and then you need a nap. Like, so, and then there's always this like downturn where you just feel kind of blah after you do something fun like that. You're like, life is stupid, you know, like the day to day stuff. So, yeah, that's what we're doing, getting ready to head back to school in a couple weeks.
I'm going to Norway on
Oh,
Thursday.
you are back to Oslo?
Yeah, gonna go skate with my skate friends.
Very good. I don't know how to say very good in Norwegian.
Yeah, then I'm gonna go to England and do more skating. Except England, it's raining all the time, so we'll see.
How are all of your other issues in life in general going?
Matt, well, I'm here. I'm alive and I'm pretty stressed out.
Mm.
So there's that. But I'm trying to not be like those people that I've
Uh-huh.
encountered where they're turning into adult children. Here's what I've noticed actually. Tell me your thoughts on this, because this also reminds me of like right after Scott died. You know, when an event happens and you're so broken from it and you're so exhausted from it and tired, and all you can do is try to remember to eat and then drink water, and everything else is overwhelming.
Hmm.
Okay. You know how people like to come up to you and give you advice on everything you should be doing,
Oh, yeah, sure.
and how it makes you feel like, well, of
Annoyed.
course I know, yeah, of course I know I need to do that or could do that, but that is like another burden added on top of what you're going
Uh-huh.
through. So I've been thinking about that word again. I'm just like, I don't, I've had to tell some friends too, like, I know that you might have opinions on what I should do, and I have no energy to even deal with anything other than trying to like eat and drink and, fulfill some work obligations. And then there's the word could. And it's like, okay, if someone's like, well, you could do this, it still is stressing me out because I'm still really tired. But I think in some form that could be a better word to use for someone when they're going through a hard thing. But I came up with a solution
Oh, great.
that everyone should take this
Share
advice.
it. Okay.
Obviously, I'm the smartest on the planet.
They should take your advice, or they
Yep,
could take your advice. Okay, go
exactly.
ahead.
Nice, good job. Oh, good. Here is what I think. People, if they do want to offer advice that's unsolicited, maybe a way to say it that will not feel like somebody is trying to say you're the worst for not doing what they think you should do is like, oh, it would be a nice idea if XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
How about
Or
that?
here's an idea.
Yeah, or like, what if da 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 instead of you should do this thing, and because you're not doing this thing, you're failing even more, and then you're stressed even more, and then you forget to eat even more. What do you think? Is that a bad idea?
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts, and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor. Unsolicited advice is always, in any realm, sure, a hard thing. And I think widows deal with this so much, either spoken or unspoken. And I think you've kind of spoken out loud. What's so hard about it is this idea that there's judgment that comes with it, and that if you don't do those things, then somehow you're failing, or that they're judging how you're doing things is not good enough right as you are doing it now, because it's like an assumption that you should be doing more, and because you're not, you're failing. And I think as humans in general, we already deal with those feelings. Like, we know a lot of things that we could be doing. I mean, even in non-stressed out situations, like I could eat less candy, right? I, could do all sorts of things. I could take better care of my yard. I could yell less at my kids. All of those things there are all sorts of ways that all humans can improve. But when you get into those like really stressful situations, and when things might actually have to change, it gets really tricky. It's hard. And it's also hard when the people who are giving you that advice, it's almost easier if you don't value their opinion. Do you think that's true? Because you can just like discard it. But when people that you know love you, or that at least, have some sort of relationship with you give it to you, then it's like almost harder to hear that and be like, oh, well, I'm not doing good enough.
Yeah. And it makes it for me, I know when I know that I can't manage emotionally anything else that somebody even says to me that and they're trying to help, then I just isolate from
Mm,
them and I don't want to talk to them. And so I
yeah.
I know we do that in the widowhood experience for sure, right? It's like you pull back from people where you're like, I just don't have energy to deal with what they're going to tell me on how to parent, or like, oh, well, at least you didn't have kids. You know, it's like, I don't want to hear that. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think just those little words are hard. And I think when we are doing a little better, maybe in the head or situationally, we can manage those better. But
Yeah.
for people where they're just in basic survival, those words are hard. And it's unfortunate the burden of navigating that falls to those going through it.
So here's a question. Do you think the better statement would be, do you want to hear some ideas I have that might be helpful? As opposed to giving the advice, asking if they're open to hearing those thoughts in the first place. So not even saying like, what about this idea? Saying, do you want to hear my idea?
Yeah, because then you can say no.
Yeah.
Or if you're like, I don't actually want to make them feel bad, but I feel like I have to say yes so they don't feel bad, at least you can maybe tune them out.
Well, and maybe you're in control a little more. The other thing is that you could also say, like, take that opportunity. I had this a little bit with when one of my sons was diagnosed with autism. A lot of people coming up to me and wanting to give me their opinions about what we should do, and all of the miracle cures we could do, or all of those types of things. It's just like you can say, right now I'm just overwhelmed and I am not really in a place to try and incorporate anything new. So if they say, do you want my ideas? Just say, why don't you? And I'm happy to talk about this maybe later, but right now I'm just too overwhelmed, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I've said that so many times to people, and then most of the time they never bring it up again. So
I think that's good if you can get to the place where you have that language. That would be helpful. I've
yeah.
started saying to friends, I'll tell you about this if you know that I just don't want any advice, and you can
Mm,
validate me if you want, or you can just
yeah.
listen. But I can't manage anything else. And trust me, if you have thought of it already, I have thought about it 17 years ago. So,
I
and
don't know, Mel. I feel like there's some really novel ideas, like ice skates and roller skates combined.
oh my gosh, can I tell you? Guess what I did? That's like ice skates are roller skates. It's an
No, they
ice
have a
skate boot. An ice skate.
blade on them.
Yeah,
You'd
but
need
then you
both.
you take off the blade and then the roller
No,
skate.
this my idea is that they're both there. So you can
Oh.
transition from ice to a solid surface. No problem.
Oh, you know who can make that? We both know who can make
Yes,
that.
Randy, my dad.
Randy Randall. Speaking of things that Randy helped me make, when I made some custom roller skates out of Nike Dunk shoes,
Mm-hmm.
I gave a clinic this week to some teenagers, my favorite people ever, musicians. Now, these were instrumentalists this week because it was
Oh,
here where we live. And I skated in and brought candy and threw it at them. Now we're all best friends. So that's how you deal with teenagers, everyone.
yeah, it's
Come
true.
skate. Yeah.
And throw candy at
How
them.
are you guys doing?
Yeah, we haven't talked to you guys in a little while. It's been a few weeks. So jump in on the Widow Wives Club. Let us know how you're doing. If you're not in the Widow Wives Club, come join us. It's our private Facebook group. It's a really awesome place. I love all the people there.
Yeah, and here's the good thing about that. If we forget to say something in the weekly podcast episode, or if you listen later than when this comes out, we do post things in there, and that's how you're going to get all your information. So that's the place to be.
Yep. And if you are interested in keeping the podcast going, will you check out Patreon? It's really how we keep the podcast moving along, because it takes money to make a podcast. So it's patreon.com slash
What is it? Widow.
WWDN.
Yeah. Join it. It's awesome. You can have ad-free content as well as a shout out in select episodes. So that's super fun. And we have 4 different tiers, the tiers of the widow, if you will. So check it out. If you don't want to do that, you can buy us tacos because we're hungry and starving. I personally still do not feel like eating food.
I got tacos yesterday and I did not eat them, Mel. So
Oh, so we will accept tacos because One day we're going to be really hungry and we're going to need 12 tacos at once. So that's buymeacoffee.com/widow we do now. Nice.
We're going to do our Patreon shout out now. We'll start with Constance Dahlbeck and cute Ronya.
David Kelly in the rainy storm of England.
Dawn Satterwhite.
Emily Wiesenberg.
Evelyn Flores.
Gail Bell.
Heather Mullins.
Ivan the Meisner.
Kat.
Krista Waite.
Maya Glasser.
Neil Hooper.
Oh, Neil, so many hugs to you.
Yes.
Becky Ziba.
Sam Finlayson.
Karen Cornejo.
Alexis King Audello.
Amber Alanez Vela.
Amy Hartman Martell.
Amy Neal.
Annika Goodman. Welcome.
Welcome, Annika. Ashley Hahn.
Barbara Schneeberger.
Becky Loiters.
Berkeley.
Brandy Younger.
Chris Steffen.
Cindy Wilkerson.
Connie Remich.
Danielle Catterberg.
Not a Debbie Downer.
Dennis Brazo.
Diana How? Help.
Dumel.
Duhamel? Duhamel?
Dumel. I think it's
Duhamel.
just, yeah.
Diana,
It's
help
definitely
us.
Duhamel.
Oh, I like that one's cool.
And
Well,
welcome,
yeah, hi. Jean Marie Massey.
Jen O'Brien.
Jenny Taylor.
Jennifer Beal.
Jennifer Brown.
Karen Lindsay. Hi, Karen.
Hi. Carol Schultz.
Laura Aguirre Penner.
Leah Johnston.
Lisa Hardman Powell.
Lou Clausen.
Auntie Marie, who I saw on my trip.
Oh,
She's
you're
the best.
so lucky. MK Anderson.
Mm-hmm, totally. Meg Murto.
Patricia Weist.
Rachel Barbosa.
Sarah Morris.
Simone Fu.
Sunshine Haven.
Alicia McAllister.
Amy Burke.
Ann Drennan.
Anna Tracy.
Audrey Henniger.
Christina Scambato.
Christine Anderson.
Cindy Reno.
Don Barber.
Debbie Fells.
Deborah Westwood.
Doris Rachel. Was that it?
She is our.
Sorry.
She is ever going to be our. Eileen Stevens Dem.
Emily Toledo.
Eric Vandermeulen. He's a dark Disney princess.
He is. And an artist.
Yes.
Aaron
Yes.
Posick. We love you.
Gabe Lozano.
Gia Benoit.
Gina Haas.
Ian Sini.
Grasshopper Jackie.
Jen Colarusso Seeley.
My mom.
Jennifer Davis.
So my mom got one of her cataracts fixed, and now she's distressed because she can see her wrinkles better. That was a side note. Jenny Armstrong.
Wait, am I supposed to take that out? Sorry, Jane. It's in. Jennifer Dickinson.
Jennifer Sanders.
Jenny Barrow.
Jenny Dippold.
Jessica Bork.
Hi, Jessica, if we haven't said
Hi.
hi already. Jocelyn Milo.
Jill Hanson Williams. Welcome. Julie Stevenson.
Karen Ochoa.
Karina Jacobo.
Kathy Murray.
Katie Getz.
Katie Radcliffe.
Katie Saucier. Or Saucier. I'm saucier than you. Wait,
I love that name.
is it Saucier or Saucier? And I think she is saucier than all of us.
I hope so. Cara Scara.
Kevin Ferry.
Chris Morgan.
Laura Bradbury.
Laura Keeley.
Laura C.
Ooh, mysterious. And then we've got Linda.
And yes, Lindsay Konopka.
Oh, man. Marjorie Lewis. Love you too, Marjorie.
Yes. Marianne Hammond.
Marianne McDonald.
Mary McGowan.
Melissa Bowers.
Melissa Hancock.
Our daughter, Missy Muirstein.
Mishy,
Missy Muirstein.
Naomi Brown,
Rachel Tang.
Rebecca Olemaker,
Robin Flam.
Stacey Saywert,
Susie Dunnigan.
Tammy Terravist.
Trenton Thompson.
Oh, happy birthday today, as of this recording, Valerian Root Packer. She went skydiving.
Oh, no. No. I would
She
not
did
do
it.
that.
Well, she's alive still.
Yes,
so.
good. Vivian Hart. Welcome, Vivian.
And tropical international traveler, Wendy.
I hope she doesn't get dengue fever. Thank you to everybody for supporting us on Patreon. I've lost my ability to talk.
Well, everyone, you can hear that Anita needs a nap and I need a nap too. So we hope that you are really stoked about this next episode. This is our friend Kari, and some of you may know her from Instagram because of her account with her daughter Sloan, who is a special needs and very special baby and is really amazing. So we are looking forward to sharing her story with you.
She's so much fun too. So we hope you enjoy her. And let's do it. I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
We're two young widows. We're just trying to help you figure out widow.
We
do
now. The following episode contains discussion around the topics of suicide. So if that means that you need to take extra care and maybe fast forward or not listen, we just wanted to give you a heads up as a trigger warning.
We almost just canceled the podcast episode and just wanted to talk to this person.
She's super fun, and we just found out we kind of live by each other, so now we need to hang out. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Do you want to tell us who you are and introduce yourself?
Yeah.
To our guests,
Yes.
our audience.
I'm going to take a guess that her name is Carl.
Yes. Yeah, well, the Starbucks on 12th Street in Ogden, Utah, you'd be accurate there because I get called Carl almost daily. So you're not wrong. I'm Kari Harbath. I'm Kari, mom to Sloan. We have our Instagram account, Kari and Sloan. And yeah, I am here because for really honestly unfortunate reasons. Because I am a widow. And so yeah, that's me.
As are we all.
Right.
At least on this
worst
Zoom
club
call.
ever.
Are you from Utah? Are you from Ogden?
So I am. I actually originally was born in Grand Junction, Colorado. And my family only spent a few years there. I mean, my parents grew up there. That was kind of like home base for my family originally. But then when I was probably like, I don't know, 7 or 8, we moved to Logan here in Utah. Lived there for a little bit or for a little while. My dad's job brought us here and then ended up in Ogden where and like surrounding areas, we were kind of talking about this earlier, but there's like a South Ogden and North Ogden and kind of outskirts, around town. And I've lived in surrounding areas basically the rest of my life. Except for like a short period of time where my husband and I had moved down to Orem. So it was like a real move for only 2 years. And then we came back to Ogden. Really, we were just meant for Ogden, I think. And so I love it here. The community here is wonderful. And it's home base.
Fun fact to everybody listening, Ogden was a city that the railroad came through back in the day. And so it was actually like a happening place for jazz, of all things.
Wow.
Did you know that?
Good fact. Yeah. Wait, so how did you know that? I'm so interested.
I'm a jazz musician.
Oh.
So, and for a couple of years, I went to Utah State, which is in Logan, for everyone listening, where Kari has lived at some point. There's really good cheese there. It's an agricultural college, good ice cream, all the things. But my teacher, he was this old dude, and he was around when he was like in his 20s, and he's like, yeah, that was the place to be. My grandma even told me stories about getting dressed up and going to Ogden, because that's where all the good dancing clubs were. And so anyway, my professor at Utah State was like, yeah, did you guys know that like Charlie Parker came through and like all these legends? And we're like, what? what happened? So then when the railroad stopped being a main form of transportation, we didn't get that jazz scene anymore. Boo!
Wow. Wow. That's amazing that you know that. That is so cool. It is a cool factoid. And kind of to add on to that, there's actually tunnels. So that made Ogden like a happening spot. You might know this. This might be a little more risque information, but there are tunnels that go underground in Ogden, and you can do ghost tours every year like in these tunnels. But basically, they used to have like brothels in these tunnels underground back in the 20s. Yeah.
In Ogden, Utah.
Ogden, Utah. It was like party central. And so they like have a bar downtown where they've made some of the tables out of like some of the doors that were actually from these tunnels and the brothels like under downtown Ogden. But you can do ghost tours through the tunnels. You can do ghost tours actually at Union Station, which is where the trains used to like they have a museum now, but supposedly it's pretty haunted. So anyway, if you're into that kind of thing, it's a vibe every year, Halloween.
Taking names for whoever wants to go on the ghost tour with me in Ogden, Utah.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. I've also played at the Union Station.
Really?
Yes.
Well, we need to talk more about this music life.
See, guys, this is why we like needed to not record the episode. But now you're gonna really get to know a lot more about Carl/Kari, not Kari, and
Not
Ogden,
Kari.
Utah, and us.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Okay.
Love that.
Carrie,
Yes.
tell us about your person. Where did you meet him? Who is he? What's your favorite thing about him? All of the things. And go.
Okay. Well, this is usually where I always cry because it's
Perfect.
yeah, here we go. I know it's funny because I think people is kind of like anecdotally, I think people always think that, at least in my experience anyway, that I'm going to cry when I talk about the hard stuff, right? But it's like anytime the happy stuff comes up or the good memories, that is immediately where I start to get emotional because it's just like, oh, it just takes you back there. See, already tearing up. And it's just something that you wish so badly you could experience again or have even known at the time, like just how meaningful and impactful those memories were going to be for you, you know? And so anyway, that's just anecdotal. And so already crying. Okay, here we go. So Aaron Loftus, that's my late husband, a weird phrase to say. We met in high school. So we met oh my gosh. I mean, I was just talking about like classic Utah drinks that I get like a 44-ounce Diet Coke at our local like soda shop. So another classic Utah thing that we did, we met at 17 years old in high school. We met and, you know, the first thing that really, I was like homeschooled for a good chunk of my life. And then I went to a charter school when I was like 13 and then transitioned into public school. And so I really didn't know people. I mean, I quickly made some friends at the public school. It was fine that I was at, but I really didn't have like that lifelong friendship like so many people did, you know? Oh, sorry. Also, you might hear random Sloan coughs or noises, and that is my daughter. She has a tracheostomy, for those of you that don't know. We will discuss that at some point. But she makes little random noises in the background. So we met, yeah, in high school. And I just didn't have like those deep friendships like so many people had. And then but I had met some good friends. And then senior year of high school, we were in a cappella choir together. And I walked in the first day and I remember there was just this somebody once the way and they've never met him, but the way that I was describing him, this is kind of how they reflected it back to me, and it was so perfect. He was like walking sunshine in the way that he smiled, and he was like this tall, just like gangly, like, I mean, perfect kind of like musician. Talk about music. He had that perfect like musician, you know, dreamy high school vibe that every high school girl, I mean, you're just like, wow, sign me up. And so I saw him and I walked into class and I was the new kid, so I stood out to him too, and he waved at me and he smiled and I waved back. And that started like this routine every day throughout senior year for like the first probably 2 months of me walking into class. He'd wave and he'd always be looking over at me and waving and smiling, and we never really interacted. And then eventually we ended up like connecting over actually homecoming, because I went to homecoming with his best friend in high school, and he was on the same date with all of us. So I went to homecoming with Aaron's best friend. We were just kind of set up. And unfortunately, this is, hopefully he never listens to this. I highly doubt he will, but Aaron's best friend was not the dreamboat that Aaron was. And so I was slightly disappointed as we went to the local Chili's for our dinner. And there was Aaron sitting across the table. And then Aaron's best friend was next to me. And it just was not the same as it could have been with Aaron at a homecoming date. So we went to a gas station, and this is like my favorite story to tell because this is so classic Aaron in high school, because he was a dreamboat and he was also a bit of a playa.
Oh, no.
I know that SOB, that stinker. Like looking back, I'm like, Aaron, wow. And he had moves. I won't lie, and they worked apparently on me. But we were in our separate cars, and for whatever weird reason, again, our homecoming dates had gone into the gas station together. So I was in one car and Aaron was in another car. And I'm sitting in this car by myself, and all of a sudden I hear, at the time I was obsessed. Aaron didn't know this, just like, I guess it was a happenstance thing, but I was obsessed. Okay, again, and remember, I'm in high school. All right. So, I mean, this isn't a reflection of me today, right? Okay. I was obsessed with Moulin Rouge at the time. And very much
still love that. Just
yeah.
So you know.
Yes. Oh my gosh, me too. But then the way this escalates is very like theater kid vibes. So that's where I'm like, that's not. I mean, maybe it's still a reflection on me. Maybe we'll just skip that part. But I was sitting in the passenger seat of a car where Aaron was right next to me. He rolled down his window, and next thing you know, he was singing Elephant Love medley to me. And he had an amazing voice. And he was singing to me through the window of his car as his date and my date were in the gas station.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
I know.
Sneaky.
Now, see, that's where it's like, that's just inappropriate. I mean, how could he do such a thing? I don't know. Like, I just look back and I'm like, all right. So, I won't lie though. I fell for that. I immediately was like, this is my dream life. I mean, I look back on that and think like, that is the epitome of high school, the epitome of theater kid life, the epitome of like what you want as, a 17-year-old going to homecoming, and like this weird, just like magic moment. And then Aaron's best friend walked out, saw Aaron singing to me. Apparently this kind of stuff had happened before, and he F-bombed it, and then got in the car, rolled up the windows, and sat down and took off. And that was that.
Okay,
Yes.
this actually seems like you could write a musical theater show about this. For real.
No, totally. Well, I mean, I agree, because then the rest of the evening, like, was mostly, and this is so cringe teenage, drama, but we were dancing. Like we would have like a slow dance at homecoming, and I was with Aaron's best friend and Aaron's with his date, and Aaron would be like watching me as I would watch him from afar, right? In high school, like, and I don't know what was playing at the time, like probably Boulevard of Broken Dreams by like Green Day, like who knows? And yet we're just like watching each other, like longingly, like we from afar. And I
like
mean,
you live on the Boulevard of Broken Dreams.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh my, Aaron, like if only we could be together. And so it was really, I mean, our start was really honestly perfect looking back, because it was just so loaded with like teenage hormones, like just dramatic theater kid city. It was perfect.
So how long did it take until you guys got married? Was it a right out of high school thing?
Okay, so that's where then the Utah part comes into play.
Yeah.
So we were together all of senior year, and then the year after senior year, and we got married 2 years after. So we were 19 when we got married.
Anita,
So,
it's you.
Hey, there you go.
Guys,
There you go.
I was 20 the first time, so
Okay. Yeah.
way
You
older.
were so old. I don't even know how. That's amazing. That's amazing that you waited so long.
I know. I was 20 for 2 whole months.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. That's one of those things that I look back on and, I at the time, uh so my family was sort of not used to that, and yet they were very supportive. They loved Aaron like a son. I mean, he was everything to my family. Um and I was so young, and I know that such a young marriage, from friends and other experiences, like I know that it can go so many ways. But for me, it was still to this day, I stand by that it was like the absolute best decision of my life. Uh and this is where I tear up, but we were together 13 years. He enriched my life so much. We grew together, like I learned so much from him. He was such I mean, this sounds kind of cliche, but he was really brilliant. He was such an intellectual, and so he was always so intellectually stimulating. We would take long drives and we'd listen to podcasts and talk about those podcasts on end. And so while our relationship started out really fueled by like teenage hormones and drama and theater kid central and whatever, in the long run, it was just this beautiful, romantic relationship and also friendship that just reached depths that I never thought I could reach with somebody. And, he knew me so well. I mean, he knew me, and again, such a cliche phrase, but better than really I knew myself. And probably still know myself. And sometimes I think I wish he could be here to see what life is like today and tell me what he thinks. And so I could tell him what I think about a few things as well.
Yeah.
And,
Damn it, Aaron.
Damn
So
it, Aaron.
what
Damn it,
year
Aaron.
was this that you got married?
2009. 2009.
Okay, 2009.
Yep.
Tell us about Sloan.
Sloan. Okay. So, so Aaron and I were married for a long time before Sloan came along. We both got our degrees. We had up a lot of goals that we kind of wanted to accomplish. We wanted to travel. We wanted to, get our education. We had wanted to grow in our careers, and we had done what we felt like we had on sort of our bucket list before having a baby. And we were so excited to have a baby. And actually, we had, with my mom, been collecting like baby items for a baby box for probably 3 years before even knowing we were pregnant with Sloan. We just had like this baby box collection where we just had random baby stuff that we would find. And some of it was great. And some of it was, you could just tell we were excited because it was like literal junk that we found at Target that you could get anytime, but we just wanted to buy it. And so it was just like this pile of baby stuff just adding up. So in I have to think about dates because, brain fog, but 2018, August of 2018, August of 2018, we found out we were pregnant with Sloan. And we had been together for such a long time, I think. And my mom, so Sloan was my mom's first grandchild. Yes. So my mom was she had so many people. We got married at 19. So they were like, okay, now where's the baby? Why are we waiting for so long for a baby?
I have the best story for you, but maybe not right now.
Okay, yes, okay.
Because a lot of my story is similar to yours.
Really? Okay, yeah,
Yes.
great. Yeah, we'll have to swap stories.
Yeah.
But so there were a lot of like comments of like, where's the baby? Why aren't we having a baby yet? And my mom would get so defensive over the years. She would be like, well, the kids want to travel. They're having an amazing life. They're doing amazing things together. They're a great dynamic couple. Like, mom was wonderful.
Good job, Mom.
Good job, mom. Good job, mom. But in the background, I always knew that like I could see mom was really excited when the day would come that we would have a baby and she could be grandma. And so 2018 rolled around. I found out I was pregnant. I was so sick immediately. There was there was no time between finding out and then immediately it's TMI, but we all know, like puking all day long. And to the point that I was initially going to urgent care twice a week to get IVs and just to stay hydrated because I was, I just had like such intense all day sickness. It wasn't just morning sickness, it was all day. And so we quickly told my parents, they were so excited. My mom wasn't much of a crier, and she just sobbed the minute she found out. And then after she kind of like came back to herself and like recovered emotionally, she was like, I knew it. And she ran out to her car and brought in a baby swing. And
Oh,
so she had, yeah.
good
So
thing you had that right then,
I know,
because it was useful.
it was
right
useful. It was, yes, exactly. We really needed that immediately. And we didn't already have 3 from our collection of like baby stuff.
But this one was for grandma's house. So
Yeah,
it made sense.
Exactly. It made sense. But yeah, so then, everything was going normal except for being really sick. And then at our 20-week ultrasound, we went in and it was like the whole crew. So it was my dad, my mom. My sister was actually working in Portland doing AmeriCorps, which is like Peace Corps, except for the US. So she was in Portland at the time, and she's very involved, but she couldn't be there because she was, out of state. So it was mom, dad, Aaron, me, and Sloan and my belly. And we went to the appointment. My dad had his camera. He's notorious for taking his camera everywhere. We were like a full production, ready to go. And we got in there, and it was, just like any other typical 20-week ultrasound. And then the ultrasound tech started to notice the energy like changed a little bit as she was doing the ultrasound, and she noticed that Sloan had a cleft lip. And so that's like a pretty, in terms of like birth defects, that's like a pretty common one. And so she, the energy shifted and it was hard, but it also wasn't like that much of a shift. She was like, okay, this is pretty common, and, we'll get through it. And we were all like trying to readjust and realizing that something was different than we planned that day. And then she picked up that Sloan had club feet on the ultrasound. And she's like, okay, there's 2 defects. So this could be a sign of something syndromic, like there's a syndrome that could be associated with this. And then she started to notice other things that eventually didn't come to fruition. It could have just been like something on the ultrasound or something happening, in utero at the time that didn't actually become an issue like post birth. But she noticed, issues with like brain growth, some issues with heart defects, things like that, while Sloan was, in utero while we were at the 20-week ultrasound. And so that day, we went from like joy, just excited to find out how big she was, confirm it was a girl. We knew it was a girl, but we were going to confirm that, just all of these small things. And it went from that to we were there until like 1 a.m. And they pulled us into genetic counseling. They talked about all the possibilities, including what happens if Sloan dies. We were immediately thrown into like, okay, and this is your new harsh reality. And we ended up deciding to go the amniocentesis route at the time. And so eventually found out that there was nothing they could mark genetically that would, show us anything about Sloan before she was born, and that sometimes can determine like if there's some sort of genetic issue that will, cause like a preterm death or something along those lines, that, you can plan better for that. Or if they're born and there's some sort of physical anomaly that they can plan to send me to like the U, for example, and I could deliver there, and which the U is like our
like the teaching hospital.
Teaching hospital. Yeah. There was some discussion around that, but eventually they just decided to keep an eye on me and Sloan until she was born. And so I went in for like the 20-week ultrasound. I went in for one of those every week until Sloan was born. So like the full MFM ultrasound. Over time, nothing else was spotted. We just kept going in until like the last 2 weeks, I ended up going on bed rest because Sloan was slowing down. Like she just wasn't moving as much, and I was swelling pretty intensely. And there were some signs that like just things weren't looking quite right. And so they had me go on bed rest, but decided not to do a C-section quite yet. And then eventually they decided, because I went in one day and Erin and I were like, she's really not moving at all. They were monitoring her heart was dropping, her heart rate. I wasn't doing well. They decided to do an emergency C-section. During the emergency C-section, they, just classic life stuff. Nothing went as planned. So
It seems to
we
be the theme in your life.
oh
Feeling
my
like.
gosh. Yeah. I thought the theme yeah, yes. If you would have asked like 2017 me, I'm sure that I would have been like, "Oh yeah, you can plan for everything." And now I'm like, "No, I don't." I mean, twisted sugar and that's about it. Like Diet Coke, that's it. So that evening, they performed an emergency C-section on me. They couldn't get my entire body numb, and so they ended up just having to wipe me out completely.
Oh, okay, good. I thought you were
Yeah.
going to say you were awake
I
for it,
know.
and I was like,
No, no,
no.
no, that would
Oh,
be horrific, horrific.
Okay.
But it was emergent enough that they yeah, just wiped me out completely. And then during that, Aaron was very lucid through the whole thing. And so he watched as, of course, as the dads do, as they pulled Sloan out, did the C-section, and then I was sitting there the entire time, and I actually was like somewhat I could talk, but I was kind of out of it. I was like E.T. when E.T.'s like E.T. phone home. I was like that a little bit. And so I was really, really worrying Aaron. And so Aaron was the sweetest and he kept trying to advocate for me. And I was saying things like, I'm in pain when I wasn't in pain. I'm hurting. I can feel it all when that wasn't the case. And the anesthesiologist just kept having to confirm with Aaron that I was okay. I was just really loopy, completely out of it.
You're just really drunk.
Yeah, really,
basically.
really drunk. Yeah.
Okay.
And so Aaron's going through that. Then they pull out Sloan, and Sloan immediately isn't breathing.
Oh.
And so they, cut the cord. They take Sloan back into they take her back into the NICU, like a NICU spot where they start to perform an intubation on Sloan. And the first like 6 times that they tried to intubate Sloan, they were unsuccessful. And so it just got quieter and quieter. And I had made Aaron promise me because we knew something was off with the entire pregnancy, with the delivery, with all of it. And so I said, if something happens to Sloan, you go with Sloan and I'll be fine. I just want to know that somebody was with Sloan. And
Yeah.
so he went with Sloan, and I said, you also need to promise me that you take pictures because my parents had a child before me and she passed away the day after she was born. My mom never held her and always talked about how she had regretted that. And then they only had one picture of her. And so I was like, you sure as hell, Aaron, you better take those damn pictures and you better go with Sloan.
That's like the worst assignment ever.
Yeah, it was.
I understand it, but also like
yeah, and this is what makes it really sad is that here's Sloan being intubated, time after time, and nurses are quiet, everybody's quiet, nobody thinks she's going to make it. And Aaron is standing in the background we had like a Canon camera, and he has tears streaming down his face, and he's like, snap, 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 just taking pictures because he's like, if I don't get pictures, I don't know what Gary's gonna do. And so it was like one of those like dark moments of like, we would look back on it and be like, well, at least you took the pictures of it all. Like they were like terrible pictures. She was like Sloan's foot, and then you'd see like this horrific medical device like peering over the edge. And it was like, I don't know why we want those, but you know what? He did it. So go, Aaron. Go, Aaron.
He's thinking, I don't know. Carrie might be a really mean drunk too. I don't know. I'm just
so scared.
I just gotta do what she said, man.
Yeah, I just gotta do what she said. No, that's exactly it. So on the 6th try, they were able to intubate Sloan. And so they decided that Life Flight to Primary Children's, which is our level 4 children's hospital here in Utah, was the only option.
I love that that Primary Children's is a level 4 hospital, but you're like, what's the University of Utah? I don't know, but like what your daughter's.
You are right. Yes, I know Primary Children's. Yeah. Yes. It's like our home away from home. It's our favorite spot. But yeah. So they decided that Life Flight was the answer for Sloan that night. And so Aaron went back, delivered the news to my mom and dad of what had happened. I still wasn't doing well. I was recovering from anesthesia. They rolled Sloan out. I saw her once before they rolled her out. They didn't think she was going to survive the flight. She did. And spoiler alert, she's still here today, if you can't tell by the trachea noises in the background. But what it led to was, she was flown to primary children's, and it led to an experience that we never thought we would have ahead of us, which was a lot of immediately thrown into the world of parenting a child with disabilities, first off. Something that we didn't expect. We, didn't plan for, again, like didn't know that that was in the realm of possibility. I think that we're just underprepared when it comes to parenthood, to understanding like that could be a possibility, among other things. And so, Sloan was in the NICU for 2 months, and in the 2 months she was there,
Oh.
she received a long list of diagnoses. The top, like the lifelong diagnosis that she has, is profoundly deafblind. So she's deaf and blind profoundly, no vision, no hearing. And then she has a long list of other medical complexities. Some of them now I've learned over time just through following like disability advocates and disabled adults that I don't talk about as publicly as I used to, just because I've learned like that's kind of her private information. But she does, which you can visibly see, she has a tracheostomy to help her with breathing. So we change her airway once a day, basically. We've been responsible for that since the day she was born. No biggie. Like we did that all the time in the NICU, learned how to change a trach, G-tube. She's been tube fed, and now she eats orally, but she was tube fed when she was born. We had to learn how to work all those machines to bring her home. Like parenthood looked a lot different than we thought. I had the matching robe and the cute swaddle blanket, and that just went in the trash because it was like, what was the point? Like just,
you swapped the swing for like a ventilator.
No, you
it's
got
fine.
it. That's exactly it.
Like a 1-to-1 thing. Although I think the ventilator probably cost like the same price as 600 swings.
Exactly. The same price as like your new car. That's what, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. The vent is expensive. And that was it. Like our home, when we came home from the NICU, was like a home hospital. Like it was just, oxygen. We had a medical cart. Every morning we'd roll her medical cart out into the living room, and we didn't have nurse care for a long time. And so we were doing it all ourselves. We were taking rotating shifts at night. We were just watching her closely and making sure we had, ongoing tube feeds. So we'd have to change the feed out every 2 hours throughout the night, watch her, make sure her airway didn't come out, because if it did, she would die. It's just that straightforward. At the time, like now it's changed a little bit. She's grown and things have changed, but at the time it was very tenuous and we still weren't sure she would make it.
It's so interesting because there's a grief process when your husband dies, but there's also a grief process that you went through before, because in your mind, you have this idea of raising this, this child, this daughter, using the swing, grandparents are going to love her, all of the things you imagine her growing up. And all that is just wiped out. And now you're dealing with a medically complex child and you're learning all of these different things. And it's like everything that you envisioned is now gone. It's decimated.
Yes.
And you have to grieve what you thought you were going to have. How did Aaron deal with it? Was it hard for him? Was it harder for one of you, the other? Or were you just like, we got this, we're a team?
Yeah, the first day we found out that she was deaf and blind was really hard. It was like an earth-shattering diagnosis, because we were like, oh, we can do anything. And then it was like deaf blindness to us at the time just seemed like this dark world of petulance. Like we just couldn't envision what it looked like. And for those who do know Sloan or have seen anything about her, she's so different. Like she's just so not that. She's light, and also she has a little bit of a dark side, but in a good way, I think. But yeah, exactly. TBD. But as time went on, actually, and this is what makes it so interesting, is that I think out of the two of us, I don't know, Aaron actually had a disabled aunt that he grew up with, and he helped take care of her. She needed help like with, using the bathroom, for example, and things like that. And she lived in their house, and he was really good with her. And so I think he was possibly more used to disability life than I was. And so he did pretty well with adjusting, whereas it took me a little bit more time, I think, to really adjust to the new reality. He he just had, and this is where I tear up again. But he loved Sloan so intensely, and almost, this is where it's hard, almost to I don't know if this is possible, but a fault, to an unhealthy level. He loved Sloan so much. He just loved her dearly, and just wanted the best for her. And um he was always on top of everything. People would always comment that like he was a bit more like a mom role, and I was a bit more like a dad role in terms of like gender roles in our relationship, and the way we parented Sloan. He was very nurturing. And then he was also he knew everything, how to handle all the medical equipment. He I would be the ones, like, we did some speaking engagements at different hospital things after Sloan came out of the NICU or things like that. And I was always the one up doing the speaking. And Aaron would be in the background holding Sloan, handling her trach, handling her tube feeds. Like he was doing all of the caretaking. And so he was really amazing in that respect and just immediately jumped on board. He did the first trach change. He did the first, G tube change. Like I was too nervous. I would watch him and be like, you have to do it first. I'm too scared. But truly, that was like the dynamic of our relationship. I mean, he was amazing in that sense. And so, I think we both had like our strengths, and we both took things on in different ways. We were really balanced that way, but at the same time, I think he was the one to really take on a lot of the medical stuff and the disability diagnosis related side of parenting first. Like he was on it. And we did so much in that first year with Sloan, with her medical needs, her really specifically medically. It was just really her medical stuff that needed a lot of help. And he was on every single thing I cannot describe. He would notice if a cast slipped. He would notice if her trach needed some kind of like if needed extra lubricant. Like he was on it, and he was so good. We were going through the motions. It was really hard. We were losing a lot of sleep because we were taking turns at night. Um, and my mom was a saving grace. She was everything. She was grandma to Sloan. She was like just the most amazing human. And she would roll in every morning, every single morning after we got out of the NICU. She'd bring us coffee and Burger King, and then she would sit on the couch quietly. She would like think
A
she
cross
was
sandwich.
Yeah, no, exactly, egg and cheese. She would sit on the couch quietly and wait for us to walk in, and we'd roll out the medical cart. We'd be in our pajamas. We'd look horrific, and she'd have the coffee and the croissant sandwiches sitting on the table, and she would just want to hold Sloan before she went to her shift at Home Depot. And so she would just sit there and hold Sloan, and Aaron and I would eat our breakfast and drink our coffees, and she would basically check in and make sure we were doing okay. So Sloan catches RSV 6 months after she was born. She gets hospitalized, and she was actually life flighted to Primary Children's again, and we don't think she's going to make it again, and it's really not going well. Aaron and I catch RSV, so we can't be at the hospital, and my mom and dad are able to be there. And so they do the rounds with the doctors. They, send information back to me and Aaron and communicate between all of us since Aaron and I can't be there. And then I go back in once I'm starting to feel better. And I take my mom and dad out to lunch, thank them. I had the best conversation with my mom. We cried and held hands. I was like, I can't do this parenting thing without you. And then I went into the hospital and sat with Sloan. And the next day, I was on a work call at the hospital, and Aaron had come back to the hospital too. And I get a text from my dad that my mom was on their apartment floor, and there were paramedics there, and they were doing compressions, and it didn't look good.
No.
And yeah.
You may not have this part of your story. I refuse.
No, I know. Exactly. And so I shut the computer. I was on a work call, and I just shut the computer, and I took off running to Aaron, who was holding Sloan. It was like I couldn't find, it was like just fog of life, and crisis kicked in, and I couldn't find him in the hospital. Eventually I did. I ended up in like 3 different corners of the hospital before I found him. And we took off. We were in Salt Lake, came back up to Ogden. By the time we got to Ogden, she was gone. And we drove up to the apartment. There were paramedics. There was the van outside to take her body. And Aaron went to help my dad. And when he went to help my dad, I don't think that he thought he would also see my mom still there. And so he saw my mom, and my mom, Aaron, had a really complicated, like a pretty complicated childhood, and his family, was a pretty rough family. It was a rough upbringing for him. He didn't have a good relationship with his family or his parents. Especially emotionally, it was really hard for him. And so my mom, in many ways, was his mom, and especially his emotional mom. And so for him to see that really traumatized him in a big way. And he wasn't, I could tell he wasn't quite the same after that day. So mom died, and we just kept going after that. Sloan came back and Sloan during all this was in the hospital with RSV. We had to go back to the hospital the next day. This is a great Aaron story. Aaron had a lot of shining moments through Sloan's life. But we were all just like speechless with, after mom had died. I mean, it's just like now it's so easy to talk about, I guess, because it's like part of life. But at the time it was like we just couldn't function. And so we showed up to Sloan's bedside while she was sick with RSV, thinking she's not going to make it. And we had a nurse that day that was not very understanding or compassionate. And so that was really hard. And Sloan had an IV in her head that was going bad, and nobody was taking care of it. And there were some other things that were happening, like just that it wasn't going well. The day wasn't going well. Our nurse was not what we had hoped for. And usually we're pretty easygoing patients. So like bad timing. It was just bad timing. And so the nurse at some point made a snide remark toward me, and I couldn't handle it, right? Because of, like, this was the day after mom had died. And so Aaron always joked that he went to the bathroom and he looked in the mirror and he said in the mirror, he said, don't say, don't say. And then he went back to our room and he shut the curtains and he said, we will not allow this nurse in. We will have a different nurse, and I will not allow anybody in here until we get a different nurse that respects the family. And that was Aaron. And he stood at the curtains until we got a different nurse. And he watched the IV in Sloan's head. He cleaned it up. He took care of everything. This was the day after mom died. And he was grieving just as much as we all were, but he kept going every day. And so we kept going. We kept going. Then the pandemic hit.
This is too much. I feel like we can't even get to the part that you're a widow because
I know. Yeah, we're really close. I promise. I'm really close.
I mean, we mean that respectfully.
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like
it's so
emotionally.
hard.
Yeah, you've gone.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I know.
Come on, man.
I know. I agree. Come on, man is right. We, start moving through life again. And it was really, really hard. And we're all grieving, bumping up against each other in grief, grieving mom. And Aaron was a light and like a sort of like a string that really helped me and my dad and my sister and all of us. And he just took on caring for Sloan so that I could have space too. I mean, he just took it on. Like I think for the first probably month or two after mom died, he watched Sloan every night. He would wake up and make sure her tube feeds were going throughout the day. He was always checking in on me, like, and not a complaint in the world. Like, he was just so kind, supportive, understood. Yeah.
Did he have a job?
Yeah, so that's actually an amazing. We work remotely. Yeah, we work remotely for a tech company, and we've worked there we both worked there for a long time. And so Sloan had been a little bit of a company celeb when she was born.
She's like the mascot.
Yeah, the mascot. Yes, exactly. And then people knew like what had happened in our life. And so they were also understanding, and we had amazing managers that like gave us some space to be able to do this. And so Aaron would work from home and help and take care of Sloan and had like the ability to do all of that. We were moving through life, then the pandemic hit. Pandemic is terrifying. And then we have a medically complex child who, we've been isolating since she was born anyway, because she can't get sick. And then the pandemic comes into play, and that's even more terrifying. And so we've been through all of this. And then I know I alluded to his childhood experiences as well earlier. And he started to have what felt like just sort of like lapses in judgment. And I can say this looking back now, but moments where it was like he was not quite there, or things would happen, and I just wasn't sure where Aaron was. And this was kind of like after pandemic. And so I just associated it with like we were going to therapy. We both were. We were working through grief. He was meditating all the time. He was, doing all the right things, right? Like working so hard. And then in June 3rd of 2020, he and I had a conversation that day. It just was really off. Something felt really off with him. He had been talking about how he kept waking up at night, looking in the mirror and thinking he was sort of like adult influences from his past that had been abusive, had hurt him, things like that. And he had been talking about that day. And so I had suggested maybe you go to a therapy appointment. He had already been to one that morning. And so he said, okay, I have a therapy appointment this evening. And we always took our therapy appointments downstairs so we couldn't hear each other if one of us had something to say about the other. Yeah, yes, exactly. And so he went downstairs and I, didn't hear from him for an hour. And then an hour later, it was just really quiet. And so I decided I should go downstairs and check on him. I think I sent him a text before that was like, hey, if you don't, respond to this in 10 minutes, I'm just going to come down and check on you because it's been a little bit long. And I went down and knocked on the door and there was silence. And this is a feeling that like I look back and it's hard to describe, if not indescribable, because it was so dark, but I just knew something was wrong. And in a lot of ways, I feel like I just knew he wasn't there, whether, it was not even just death, but like that just he was gone somehow. And I knocked on the door and there was no response. I knocked again and I tried to open it and realized it was locked. And then, started shaking the door and I stepped back and the door opened and there was Aaron on the floor and he had died. I called 911. They showed up. They confirmed he died by suicide. Then that threw my life into widowhood. And I mean, I laugh. I laugh. It's like a coping mechanism, right? I think we all do that to some extent where it's like you get to where it's almost like the dark, unbelievable nature of it all. You're just like, yep. And that's it. That's the story. Because I think 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I never would have thought. My joke is always like, oh yeah, and I was eating avocado toast at our local bougie little avocado toast place, like worried about which Stanley Cup I was going to get. Like that was my life, right? And it's like now the perspective that I have and the way that it has changed so drastically, there's no going back. And I'm still in disbelief. Like I still can't believe it.
So did he actually have the therapy appointment?
No, so he had lied about that. And I think that he had done, when I look back, I think that's something that he had done so that he knew he would have time in order to complete the suicide. And I think in a lot of ways, the way it happened, I think that he thought I wouldn't be able to get in and that maybe a cop or somebody else would have to get in and I wouldn't see anything. My therapist and I have had many sessions now, and the way that he completed suicide was in a way that was not, other than the fact that he was dead, it was not very visually jarring. And he also, I think, did that on purpose. He had thought about that. When I look back and the things I've learned now, I think that he was suffering from manic episodes due to sleep deprivation, some of this trauma from his childhood and his upbringing stacking up. And then he was beginning to think that he was an unsafe person, again, in like a mind that wasn't his, or like he was not of sound mind. He wasn't of sound mind. I think he was worried about me and Sloan, and he was concerned about our safety. And the only way at that point that he could see keeping us safe was by exiting the picture altogether because of what he was experiencing in these manic episodes and what he had experienced as a child. He said that Sloan would be the first person unaffected by people that had affected him so greatly growing up and had impacted him in a negative way. And so I've really tried to honor that since he died. And I just know that that was something he was so concerned about. And in these manic episodes, from things that I found on his phone, in his laptop, things that I looked at after he died, he was really good at hiding it all. And yet he was so concerned that we were going to be affected by the things that had affected him so greatly that he thought exiting the picture was like the only way to help us and to keep us safe. And so it's complicated. Yeah.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard.
Complicated. Like your entire life is
Yeah. Yes.
So I'm curious about what kinds of feelings you had towards Aaron and still have towards Aaron. I mean, it's like you understand kind of where his mindset was, but it would still be hard not to just be pissed at him.
Yeah.
At the same time, have you
Yes.
felt a lot of those really conflicting emotions? Like, you got to be kidding me. And also, like, it was a loving gesture in a way. So that's got to
Yeah.
also be very confusing, too.
Yeah. I mean, it is really, they're really, yeah, conflicting is a good word. I think that, when he died at first, I think probably so many can relate to this, but I was just so lost. And it was so out of nowhere. I was so lost. And I was sure that I was just going to die of heartbreak. There was like no question in my mind. So for the longest time, I was like, oh, well, I'm going to die tomorrow. It was like I couldn't even think about anything else. It was like I couldn't even process sort of any other emotion other than like my heart is broken and that's it. There's nothing else there. As time has gone on, I have I've only really had a lot of love for Aaron, and I can see he was such a kind, loving, authentic, genuine person and loved Sloan and I so intensely. Like the intensity of his love, again, that's why I say maybe to an unhealthy point at times. Like I see that for him, and that is really like it's like that's almost all that I have space for. But there are those times where I've been up, especially right after he died, maybe 6 months after he died, where I'd be up with Sloan at 3 a.m. changing her trach or having to, like she was sick. She ended up with COVID about in the October after Aaron died, and she was admitted to the ER and again almost didn't make it. And that was a whole other thing. But those are the times where I have been like, damn it, Aaron, like, where are you, man? Like and that makes me tear up because it's just, we like signed up for it together and it is really hard to, to experience those things without him there.
So you have a lot of factors in your life that
Yes.
can be contributors to anxiety and depression. How are you doing?
Well, good question. Well, therapy has been great. I actually have an amazing therapist. I'll just throw this out there because this was a really supportive thing that a friend did for me. But after my mom died, my dear friend Darian actually ended up calling a bunch of therapists in my area because, Sloan's birth had happened. I'd been through that, and then mom dies. And so we'd been through a lot already. And she called a bunch of therapists in my area and found a therapist that had worked with parents of medically complex kids and was familiar with grief. And so I was connected with this therapist before Aaron died and had worked with her for a while. And then Aaron died. And this therapist was amazing, is amazing. I'm still talking to her today. But it was like 2 days after Aaron died, and I'll never forget meeting with her. And we sat in silence for like 5 hours, and she tried to get me to eat ice cream. And all I can remember from it is the ice cream melting over my hand. And she kept saying, just like, take one more bite, Kari. And I was like, I can't. And we just sat there for 5 hours, and I would say like 2 words. And then she would say, just one more bite. And I'm like, I can't. And that was really our therapy session. as we just sat there together. And she showed up at like 10 p.m. and it was a whole thing. But I say that because I think developing a relationship and finding the right therapist for you has been really key. That's key, first and foremost. Another piece for me has been EMDR, especially around experiencing both, witnessing like medical trauma with my daughter Sloan. I've witnessed a lot of medical trauma through all of, the experiences she's had, and then also the trauma that I experienced in Aaron's death and my mom's. And, there's just a lot of pain and trauma there. And so working through EMDR has helped me a ton, and I recommend it for anyone and everyone. I think sometimes EMDR is such a fascinating thing because now when I share stories, I can seem maybe a little bit dry in how I share them, or like a little bit bland. And in some ways, it's because of how much I've worked through therapy and EMDR specifically that it's helped me kind of just maybe become a bit more balanced in how I can process those experiences. And everybody's different. Things work different for everybody, but those have worked greatly for me. And then meds, but the right meds. Aaron was on meds before he died. This was pandemic, so he met with a psychiatrist for like 10 minutes over a video chat. They prescribed some medication for depression. I don't think, again, looking back, we don't think that was what was going on. They weren't really the right meds. It was a high dosage. A side effect of those meds can be suicidal ideation. And so again, like finding the right meds, making sure you're open about that, you communicate. That's a big piece of it too. Connecting with others online. So, I actually worked in corporate social media before all of this happened. And so I ran social media accounts, or like helped run social media accounts for like big tech companies here in Utah. And I thought the world of social media was just bullshit. Like, I was like, I hate this. There's no reason for it. And I will never, ever have any interest in my personal life of like, having maybe a network online, or like, gaining, I hate this term, but having a following or whatever. And as time has gone on and these things have happened, I've realized like the importance of community, especially with people who understand your experiences. And you can't always find those people like next door or in real life. Sometimes that's online now. And so that has given me an entirely new perspective on social media. And I consider myself in some ways maybe like an anti-influencer. I never want to be considered an influencer. I can't stand it. I hate that term. I might have a Stanley Cup in front of me. I might drink my Diet Coke, but beyond that, like I never in my life want to be called an influencer. But at the same time, the connections with people who have experienced grief, who parent children with disabilities, who are widows or widowers, or, have lost their mom, like those connections they just mean so much. And so that has been a really like straightforward, simple way to cope, I think.
The beautiful thing about you, Carl,
Yes.
is that you're a one-stop shop, right? Like you hit all of these.
I hit it all.
So people don't have to follow different people. They just have you. They're like parent loss, medically complex child, widow.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom,
Boom. Done. Yeah, I should change my Instagram bio. One-stop shop.
One-stop shop.
Yes.
One stop Carl.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, that's good.
Also, Kari, I just want to declare it to the world that you can have as many 44-ounce Diet Cokes as your heart desires.
Okay,
right?
Great.
If you've lived through this kind of stuff, and the sucky and beautiful thing again is that it's not like it's over. You still have Sloan. You're parenting her by yourself. She's still medically complex. You still have like all of these scares. You still have things that people will never understand how much you deal with.
Yeah.
And you're doing it alone now. You don't even have your mommy to help you.
What would you say to somebody listening to this that has lost hope?
This one's a hard one because I have had people in my life that have been through periods of time where they have also lost hope and they have been through significant loss. And when Aaron died or my mom died, I remember they told me there would be okay times again. And I just like couldn't, there was no way that I could even listen to it. And I know they knew that. So first I want to acknowledge that, that like, I know that there could be people listening, or there are just in general, that's part of the experience, that you're just going to go through a period of time where you just need to survive. And that's it. There's nothing else like that. You just have to survive. That's it. Just make it. Just breathe. There were times where I would my therapist taught me to look at a timer and count the seconds or the minutes until I would make it to like the next minute. And so I want to acknowledge that space first. Like, I know that that space exists, and it's really hard to see anything beyond that when you're in that space. Now, I have been in that space, and I thought there was never going to be a day that I would say this. I cannot believe that this is coming out of my mouth. But there will be okay moments again. There will be good again. And the thing is it's like you never, and I know that there are so many, you see this a lot, I think, in the grief community, that people talk about the experience of how like it's not like you lose space for love or for grief for the person that you lost. Or, it's not that I don't think of Aaron like every single moment of every day still, or even my mom. But there's also, it's like I've gained more space around those losses to have okay experiences too, and to experience new moments and new good things. And it's hard because it feels so cheesy and cliche sometimes saying these things. But as you continue living and you continue moving forward, your person or whoever you've lost, they won't be forgotten. You're not going to forget them. Their legacy is going to become integrated in part of your life and how you live and how you show up for the world. And, I think that every day, like when I show up for Sloan, I'm like, okay, Sloan's a part of Aaron, and I'm doing this for Sloan and Aaron. Or, I find pieces of my life where I can, like my therapist, I keep referring back to her. Thank you, therapist. But calls it like meaning making, where maybe you find a piece of your life where you're like, okay, I can, find some sort of meaning in this small thing. And they don't have to be huge things. They don't have to be public things. It can be a private moment where you find a moment of meaning for yourself, where you connect with your lost loved one. And I think that those are so important to find. And I also think like too, an unhelpful thing that people often do is comparing losses. And I think that it's important to remember that, this is something I have to remind myself of all the time, that like, that's going to happen for the rest of our life, that people will always compare, unfortunately, one loss to another, when in reality, like our loss is the biggest loss to us. And acknowledging that is another thing that's just always going to happen for us. Like we can say, okay, yeah, to you, your biggest loss was your person. But to me, my biggest loss was my person. And it may feel so simple and silly, but I think that that's something that we forget so often.
So I have a question about when you talked about the moments when, or the days or the times when you felt like you were just going to die, right? Of a broken heart, because it just felt so awful. Did you feel fear in that thought too? Because you think about Sloan and like what would happen to her if you did die of heartbreak.
Yes.
I mean, I think all parents feel that way, but then you think of somebody who, you can't just give Sloan to like the next door neighbor, and they don't know that they don't even know that there's lubricant for a trach. Yeah. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Also, what a weird thing to bring up, like lube. I was like, why did I bring up the lube? That was just like such a weird thing. But yes, yeah, no, exactly. It's funny that you say that, because there was a lot of fear, and I well, I remember one thing I kept doing is like, so I had people that were amazingly supportive and a community that rallied around Sloan and I in big ways at the height of the pandemic, like just really creative, amazing people. And one of the things that they did was like, a meal plan system for several months where they were delivering meals and groceries to our house and things like that. And every time that they would plan it or somehow a question would get to me, usually it would go to my sister first. She moved in with me after Aaron died to help me care for Sloan. But if for some reason I was answering a question on something I would need or something like that, I would answer it with the mentality of like, yeah, I won't be here tomorrow, but I need to answer it for Cassie, my sister, because I was just sure I was going to die. And the fear stemmed into a place where like I cannot tell you how quickly I established legal documents around what would happen if I died. I mean, it was like a month and a half after Aaron died, and I had Sloan's entire, will or my will set up. What would happen with Sloan if I died, who Sloan would go to, where the money would go, like all those things, what would happen with her medical needs, who's to care for her. I mean, it was immediate because again, a lot of that came from not even like knowing sort of the fragility of life and that like people die, but it was like, oh, I'm going to die. So I better get this ready because when I die, we need to make sure that Sloan is taken care of and that everybody's set up for as much success as possible. And luckily, I guess luckily I didn't die. Still here.
Well, we're glad you didn't because now
Thanks.
we want to hang out.
Now we'd be friends.
So fun.
Yeah. Exactly.
Everything happens for a reason.
It's so funny. Oh my gosh. That is so funny because I had a few notes and one of them under like what people did that wasn't helpful. That's like the first thing. Everything that happens for a reason. I can't remember what, but like all the tropes.
Mm-hmm.
Just, my gosh. They are cringe. Not
the
good.
Worst.
The worst. I'm like, just wait until something happens to you for a reason and then come back to me.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for that day for some people. Maybe.
No, seriously.
So I have a question for you, and maybe it's a jerk question to ask.
No, yeah.
But, well, first of all, do you believe in an afterlife?
So that is actually a really tricky one for where I'm at right now. We're from Utah. So Aaron had grown up in the LDS church. I was a Nevermo, non-Mormon.
I've never heard this term, but I love it.
Nevermo.
Like a never nude.
Yes, exactly. Except Nevermo. Yeah.
Like Tobias.
And we got together. And then he actually, before we had met, he was super young, but he ended up leaving the church. And then he and I, that was part of how we really grew together, is that we were both just like dinguses when we got together. And we were like, yeah, like God isn't everything. Like that was like our hot take when we were like 17. I can remember saying that to him on a drive. And then over the years, that was like our favorite thing to do was listen to philosophy podcasts, religious podcasts, expose ourselves to everything, all of the teachings everywhere. And both of us really, I would consider myself probably leaning toward atheist. And so that I don't as much believe, I don't really know what I believe, but I don't know that I've been given enough proof to believe in an afterlife. However, with that said, it's a weird one now because I have had this, going back to my therapist jokes that for being her only atheist client, that I have had the most woo-woo experiences of all.
It's always how it happens, I feel like.
Yeah. And so I have had quite a few of those since both Mom and Aaron died. And some things that I'm like, I still to this day can't quite explain it. And so, it's one of those things now that I've gotten to the point that I am a firm believer in that, like, we can do the best we can and love each other and support each other while we're here. And then whatever happens next happens. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. But yeah, I've had some woo-woo stuff happen.
So I have this vision, like, it's really hard to be a widow. Like, it's really hard. And it's really hard to be a widowed parent. And I have 4 kids. All of them are not medically complex, but it's really hard. And I've had these moments of like visualizing Jason sitting on the edge of a cloud, like his legs are like dangling off and he's looking down at me and he's like, she's doing such a good job. Like, I'm so proud of her. And I
Yes.
really, really, really want Aaron to join Jason on that cloud.
Oh,
Because
I
I'm like,
love that.
I'm like, holy shit. Like, like this woman is amazing, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's so
Oh,
much and
thank
you're doing so
you.
much. And so I don't care if you don't believe in the afterlife and it's fine. I'm assigning it to you.
No, I love that.
Aaron
I
is on
love
the
that.
cloud. They're like kicking their feet and they're
Hey,
like,
Do
it
they
could
wear
be a
sandals?
Yeah, no, exactly.
I don't know. I've
I need
never
to
thought
know
about-
what their outfits look like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and can they have Diet Coke? That's the question.
Scott would bring it to them because that was his
Yes.
drink, of
Jason
course.
was a Mountain Dew guy, so it would have to be a Mountain
Oh,
Dew.
wow, that is hardcore. Aaron was Dr. Pepper.
Ugh.
So,
He's my bro.
yeah, Dr. Pepper, yep.
And I'm Coke with
But
you,
not
Carrie.
diet.
Not diet. Do you want to let us know where people can find you on Instagram?
Yeah, so Kari and Sloan, KariandSloan. And
Okay.
yeah. Yep.
Check our show notes if you forgot already
couldn't
how to spell, which is fine.
And now, Carrie, we always like to end the interview with a really like existential question that really kind of like brings us full circle and helps our listeners really like get something to take away and like make their lives a little better. And I think, Mel, do you want to answer that, or do you want to ask that question?
I do. I just want you to know the weight of this question.
Okay, I'm ready.
Like, Anita already asked you about afterlife. Like, times this by 10.
Okay, I'm ready.
What is your favorite cheese?
Cheese. Oh, you know what's oh well, I am gonna make it existential because
Oh boy.
when we talk about mental health, or like, when people have said like, what would you say to somebody who's struggling with mental health, or maybe back to the hope question, one thing that I always say is, and actually my friend said this to me after Aaron died, there's going to be more cheese to enjoy. And I'm like, that is good.
Aaron's not eating it. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, or that like if you just stay alive one more day, there's gonna be more cheese. Like just make it one more day, more cheese, more chocolate, more, like just one more day. And there's more ahead. So I love that. And I also made it really existential. I think that's my
Leave it
gift
to Carl.
now. Yeah.
So all the
Silly
cheese.
question.
Your answer is all the cheese?
Okay. I don't, Harmon's always has like a really good selection of like all the fancy cheeses. So I would say like a fancy, but see, it's not like specific. So a fancy cheese from Harmon's that has some kind of like rosemary thing on the brine of the cheese because it's good. You know what I mean? You're like, that's fancy. And then it's like it's just a small wedge for like $10 or more. And then you're like, that's the best one. And it's going to be good when that's the case.
Love it.
Oh my gosh. Carrie, you're our
What I would get.
favorite.
Well, thank you. This has been so amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, thanks for
you
being
so
here.
much. Thank
She
you.
didn't even know what she was getting herself into.
know.
And now
We're sorry.
No, I loved it. I mean, anytime reliving traumatic events is
sure.
good,
Yeah.
Might as well.
Why not? Thank you so much for joining us today, Carrie. We hope all of our listeners have loved hearing your story and some of the wisdom that you put in, even when it wasn't asked for. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
You guys come check out the Widow Wives Club on Facebook. It's our private group. Just make sure you answer all the questions. It's wonderful. If you want to keep the podcast going, check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
If you'd like to buy us tacos, go to buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonow. And don't forget to get our free app with all the things, because it's all in one place.
Until we get to talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
Oh, and I'm Kari.
/Carl. We are two young widows and one Carl who is wise beyond her years. And we are all just trying to figure out, widow,
We
do
know.
This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.